Good evening, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to be here, standing here in front of you. When I was in school, I don't think I missed a single day of school because I enjoyed my school days so much that it was with a great wrench that I would stay away. I think some of that still remains with me. So when there is an occasion to be part of a school event, I'm quite happy to be part of it because in some strange way, I feel as though I am returning to that glorious part of my life, which was my student years. I'd like to begin by asking you a question. Last night, how many of you actually looked up at the skies? Not to check if it's about to rain, but to see if the stars are there. Can I see a show of hands? Oh my God, I don't see too many people who look at the stars. Now, it is rather sad because I think you should step out and once in a while look at the stars because the stars are not just, astral bodies. They're something else. They are also, I would say, creatures of another dimension who excite our imagination. But more than that, let me explain to you why we need to look at the stars. We need to understand who we are within, and for that, we need to look beyond. Now, from the dawn of humankind to a mere 400 years ago, all that we knew about our universe came through observations with the naked eye. Then Galileo turned his telescope towards the heavens in 1610, and the world was no longer the same. Saturn, we learned, had rings, Jupiter had moons, that nebulous patch across the center of the sky is called the Milky Way, and it wasn't a cloud, but a collection of countless stars. Within just a few years, the notion of the natural world would be forever changed. A scientific and societal revolution quickly happened. In the century that followed, telescopes grew in size and complexity, and of course, power. And now you must be wondering, what does any of this have to do with being a writer or me standing here and talking to you? Let me tell you something very, very interesting, for which we need to go inside a telescope. Unlike what was used before, Hubble, I'm sure all of you have heard of Hubble's telescope, used a mirror to reflect rather than lens to retract, and with that, when the objective lens were used, it focused on different wavelengths of light at a slightly different point along the axis of the telescope. And this causes something called a chromatic aberration. So similarly, all of us use a set of lenses to understand the world. It is with this pair of lenses that we look at everything around us, and we study and analyze people we are surrounded by, and even those outside our purview of interest. So just as in telescopes before Hubble's 100-inch, what caused the chromatic aberration, all of us are guilty of doing the same, of looking at the world with a set of lenses which isn't exactly the right way to look at the world. Now, in everyday terms, this chromatic aberration defines how we are with the world. However, to correct this chromatic aberration, let us mirror ourselves in the people we deal with. This mirroring, or our emotional intelligence, steps up who we are as people, and it steps in to rectify the disorientation we feel or sometimes the distortion with which we view the world. Now, as a writer, one of the key tools that I use is being able to understand my characters. And it's only when I understand my characters can I bring them alive on paper. Now, I think one of the most important things that I need for that is emotional intelligence. And the more I try to understand emotional intelligence, I began to see it as something that is a prerequisite for every human being who inhabits the planet Earth. Now, according to psychology today, emotional intelligence refers to the ability to identify and manage one's own emotions as well as the emotions of others. Emotional intelligence is generally thought of as being nice, kind, etc., but that isn't emotional intelligence. The ability to harness our own emotions and apply them to tasks like thinking and problem solving is what makes emotion intelligence separate. And the ability to manage emotions, which includes those of other people's, and regulating one's own emotions to get along with the world around us. All of this is what psychologists refer to as emotional intelligence. In my writing classes, I always tell my writers that to create a memorable character, one needs to understand the character. The key to understanding a character is to being able to step into their skin. I won't say step into their shoes, because stepping into the shoes is a very superficial act, but step into the skin of your character and understand their emotions. How do they react to their particular situations? How do they engage with the world? And I think that is the fundamental building block of education, of learning empathy. Empathy is not about, feeling sorry for somebody. Empathy is about being able to take the path that the person in front of you is taking and follow them along it, so you understand their problems and understand why they do something and why and what is the reason for them to do it. Now, one of the things that very often comes up when I'm interacting with students or writers is they always ask me about why is it that my books are so research intense? And I tell them that is because I need to understand what I am going to be writing about before I start writing it. And again, I'd like to use an example from the world of dance, Kathakali, to be specific. When I was researching a book of mine called Mistress, I had become part of Kerala Kalamandalam for a bit as a short-term student to understand what Kathakali was all about. And one of the first things my Ashan there told me was that he said, people assume that you can study for a few years and then get onto the stage and become a performer. The truth is, for anybody to perform 1 minute on the stage, you need to have put in 100 hours of practice. So there is absolutely no shortcut to hard work. There is absolutely nothing that can be achieved without our engaging with it at a level that you can only call a passion. Otherwise, it's just a banal, everyday task, which we all do without even thinking about it. We can't relegate what excites us, whether it is music, dance, literature, history, botany, whatever it is. We can't relegate it to some of those tasks that we perform, chores that we perform on a daily basis. Um, it cannot be as banal as brushing your teeth or having a shower. Those are things that you do to maintain your personal hygiene. But to elevate your mental state, you need to be able to persevere and pursue it with a single-minded focus. And it doesn't matter whether you are an artist or whether you are a scholar, whether you're a researcher, or whether you're somebody who has probably what could be considered a drab job. But none of it matters, because we, the people who are practicing it, are the ones who make it exciting and different. When we imbue our activity with our passion, when we imbue it with what we think is the most important thing for us, then, giving it that supreme importance, then what happens is automatically what is drab and dull becomes exciting and exhilarating. So I would urge you all, my dear students and young members of the society, the world lies in your hands. The world is yours to create, the world is yours to build, and you can't do it unless you have some of the essential tools that you only acquire when you are in school. Chiefly, and in this society that we live in today, which is completely torn with so many kinds of troubles and strife of different sorts, it's important that you, as the younger generation of this country, you take it upon yourselves to be part of the nation building process. And how do you do that? You do that by being inclusive. You are inclusive to an extent where you believe that the person next to you is just as good as you. You do not think that a person is different because they hail from a different community, they hail from a different religion, they hail from a different state. All of us beneath our skins are the same. All of us have the same 206 bones. All of us have the same 32 teeth. All of us use our eyes to see, our ears to hear, our mouth to speak, and our tongue to taste. Nothing is different. We just look different. We might have different families. We might have different homes that we belong to. But as human beings, we are all the same. And to even imagine that there can be a gradation among human beings, whether it is by gender or by religion, is probably the worst crime anybody can create and can commit against humanity. So my humble request to all the young children here and the young adults here are to believe that we are all the same, we are all equal, and we are all part of this wonderful country called India. And it is this that should identify us and nothing else. And I would urge you to make the most of the time that you spend here in school, because this is going to determine who you are going to be as adults. It's not about the degrees that you chalk up against your name. It's not going to be the awards and achievements. It's not going to be about all the material and tangible symbols of success, but it's about who you become as an adult. And that building process happens here while you are within your school. And I would think that you should try and get the maximum out of everything that you can do here. I can see that this is a school that encourages academics as much as it encourages extracurricular activities. And it's important that you learn to become a rounded human being. There is a concept called the Renaissance man, which is basically about somebody who is empathetic, sympathetic, and has a great understanding of the art forms. It isn't essential for everybody to be a writer, a singer, a dancer. Sometimes you can just be somebody who enjoys it and enjoys it to such a degree that it becomes a driving force in the way you lead your lives. Because it's at school we also learn one of the most important aspects of who we are as adults, which is discipline. I'm sure this is a word that you hear countless times, you know, that children are often told that discipline is important to you. But why is discipline important? Discipline is important because it creates a format for us to structure our day and our lives by. Otherwise, it's not about being hinged to a clock. It's about being hinged to a set of practices which will help you to save time, manage time, and use that saved time for other better things. So once again, I would like to thank the management of the school and the PTA Association and everybody who has made me so welcome here, which is just about everybody that I've met since this evening. And thank you again for inviting me.